He was a man who seemed to have everything anyone could wish for. His home was warm and welcoming, filled with laughter and the smell of fresh flowers. Friends often said he had a kind heart, and people admired the way he treated everyone with respect. He was preparing for the happiest time of his life, the day he would marry the woman he loved. She was beautiful, graceful, and charming, and everyone who met her could not help but praise her elegance. On the outside, their life looked perfect. Their love seemed untouchable. The kind of love stories were written about. The couple spent their mornings planning the wedding, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, and picking out clothes that matched each other perfectly. He loved seeing her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, and how she held his hand as if nothing else mattered in the world. People often stopped by to compliment them, calling them the perfect couple. And he, proud yet humble, accepted the praise with a quiet smile. Inside the house, the maid quietly moved from room to room, cleaning and arranging things with care. She had been with the family for years and had seen many events, celebrations, and small troubles that came and went. She noticed how devoted he was to the woman he was about to marry. She noticed the way he would sometimes pause and glance at the photos they had taken together, his eyes soft with love and admiration. But she also noticed small things that did not fit the picture-perfect image. Sometimes, the woman would speak sharply to him over small matters, as if he had done something wrong, though he would only nod quietly, apologizing even when he was unsure what he had done. She had a way of controlling situations, steering conversations in her favor, and making decisions for him in a manner that left him hesitant to speak up. To outsiders, it looked like caring guidance, but the maid sensed something different. There was a subtle tension in the air, a quiet unease he seemed to carry, though he never shared it with anyone. The days moved forward, filled with laughter, flowers, and wedding plans. Friends visited often, and relatives came to celebrate their love. The woman always appeared perfect, attentive, and loving, never allowing anyone to see the small cracks in her smile. She would hold his arm when they walked together, speak in a soft tone, and yet there was a sharpness in her eyes when no one was looking. The maid, watching quietly, could feel the difference between the outward charm and the hidden control. He, caught in love and admiration, rarely noticed the tension. He believed she cared for him in the way everyone else did. He trusted her completely. He would sit late at night, thinking of how lucky he was, imagining the life they would have together, the family they might build, and the endless happiness ahead. Friends would often say he glowed, and it was true. He did glow when he was with her. A light that came from believing in love, but there were small incidents that made the maid uneasy. Once, she found him cleaning up a small spill in the kitchen, while she had already told the woman, and yet the woman scolded him quietly, saying he was careless. Another time, the maid noticed the woman reading messages on his phone when he stepped away, then smiling to herself as if she had won some private victory. The maid could not understand why he would allow these things, but she sensed the quiet pressure that was building around him. Despite these small signs, the household moved in a rhythm of happiness. The garden was filled with fresh flowers for the upcoming wedding. The kitchen smelled of sweet pastries and cooked meals, and the rooms were decorated with ribbons and lights. Friends and family came to admire the arrangements, complimenting the choice of colors, the elegant touches, and the thoughtfulness in every detail. Yet behind the beautiful scenes, a silent tension lingered like a shadow, noticed by everyone but the maid. He would sometimes spend long hours thinking about what kind of life awaited him after marriage. He imagined long walks, laughter, and quiet nights filled with love and understanding. He could not imagine the thought that his happiness might be under threat. To him, the love he felt was pure, unbreakable, and absolute. Everyone told him he was lucky to have found such a devoted partner. Everyone believed in the love story they had created together. The maid, however, had a way of observing without being seen. She noticed how the woman's charm would sometimes slip into a controlling tone, how a smile could quickly turn into a look of subtle dominance, and how the man would respond with hesitation and obedience. She could see the quiet exhaustion in him that no one else noticed. The small moments where he looked at the ceiling as if trying to escape his thoughts, and the tiny sighs he would release when he thought no one was watching. It was in these quiet observations that the maid began to feel a sense of unease. She could not explain it to anyone, and she knew she must be careful. The household was filled with joy and laughter, yet underneath, she sensed a dangerous imbalance. Something about the way the woman seemed to control and influence him did not sit right. She watched how he smiled when he was around her, how he laughed at her jokes, and how he seemed to wait for her approval in everything he did. No one else seemed to notice. Friends, family, and colleagues praised the relationship, believing it to be the perfect match. The couple was seen as a symbol of love, someone others could aspire to emulate. Yet the maid's careful observation told her a different story. She could feel a tension that grew quietly, almost invisibly, a pressure that was hidden behind smiles and polite words. She worried silently, unsure if she should speak up or wait for something more. Even in the most ordinary moments, the differences appeared. He would sometimes forget to eat because he was too focused on pleasing her. He would sometimes stay up late, restless, thinking about her mood, her words, her reactions. He carried the weight of unseen expectations, believing that this was all part of love, part of being a devoted partner. The maid watched quietly, wishing she could warn him, but knowing that love often blinds people to danger. As the wedding day grew closer, the preparations became more elaborate. Dresses, suits, flowers, cakes, and decorations, all meticulously planned. Invitations were sent, guests confirmed, and schedules created. The household was buzzing with excitement, laughter, and hope. Friends came to offer advice, relatives came to help, and everyone admired the couple's apparent happiness. To the outside world, everything was perfect. To the maid, the small tensions, the subtle manipulations, and the quiet exhaustion were impossible to ignore. She noticed how the woman would sometimes isolate him during conversations, subtly steering the discussion, ensuring her opinions were the only ones heard. She noticed the way he would apologize, even for things he did not do, as if trying to avoid conflict. And she noticed the hidden fear in his eyes, small and fleeting, but enough for her to feel alarmed. She knew that while everyone else celebrated their love, something dangerous was quietly growing in the background. Despite all this, the man remained unaware. He loved fully and completely. He believed in her words, her smiles, and the life they were building together. He planned every detail with excitement, thinking of the joy they would share. Every morning he woke up feeling grateful. Every night he went to bed dreaming of a happy future. He could not imagine the shadows lurking behind the smiles, the small manipulations, or the quiet pressure that surrounded him. The days passed in a blur of preparations, excitement, and subtle tension. Friends would come, offer advice, and leave with smiles, praising the couple and their love. Relatives would visit, sharing laughter and stories, and the maid, always quietly observing, continued to watch the subtle differences, the hidden signs, and the quiet exhaustion. She felt a heavy weight of worry but chose to remain patient, knowing that the truth would reveal itself in time, even as the household prepared for the celebration. The quiet unease grew stronger. The man's love and trust were unwavering, and the woman's charm remained flawless to everyone else. Only the maid could see the small cracks, the hidden pressures, and the potential danger. And though no one knew it yet, the story that seemed perfect on the outside was quietly heading toward a shocking revelation that would change everything. As the days passed, the excitement of the wedding slowly mixed with subtle unease. The household was still filled with preparations, flowers, and laughter. But the maid could sense a change in the atmosphere. The man seemed quieter, more distracted, and often lost in thought. His laughter had a faint hesitation, as if a small weight pressed on his chest. The woman, who had always seemed perfect, began showing behaviors that the maid had quietly noticed before. But now they seemed stronger, more insistent. It began with small things. The woman would suggest changes to the wedding plans at the last moment and grow upset if her ideas were not followed exactly. She insisted on certain colors, certain flowers, and even certain foods for the guests. On the surface, It seemed like careful planning. But the maid noticed the way she would frown at him if he did not immediately agree. He would try to explain politely, but her reaction would make him quickly back down. She had a way of making him feel that any disagreement was his fault. The maid also noticed subtle changes in the way she interacted with the people around her. Guests were still welcomed warmly, and relatives were still treated with charm. But those who observed carefully might have noticed a cold edge in her tone, a sharp glance when things did not go her way. She had a way of isolating the man in small ways, suggesting that certain friends were distracting, or that family members did not understand their love. The man, trusting and loving, did not question these suggestions. He believed she only wanted the best for them both. There were moments when the man seemed exhausted. He would sit alone in the living room after long days of wedding planning, staring at the ceiling or gazing out the window, his mind lost in worry. The maid would sometimes bring him tea or a small snack, and he would smile faintly, grateful but distracted. He never spoke about the heaviness he felt. He did not want to worry anyone, especially not the woman he loved. And so he carried his growing unease quietly, masking it with a smile whenever someone entered the room. The woman's behavior became more controlling over time. She started going through his personal belongings under the guise of helping him organize. But the maid noticed the way she would examine every letter, every note, and even his phone messages. When the man asked about it, she would smile sweetly and say she only wanted to help. But there was a quiet power in her words that made him feel guilty for questioning her. She seemed to enjoy the control she had over him, though she hid it behind charm and grace. The maid tried to remain neutral, careful not to interfere directly, but she began to see patterns that alarmed her. The woman would create situations that made the man anxious, subtly suggesting that things could go wrong if he did not listen to her. She would plant ideas that made him doubt his own judgment, and over time, he started relying on her completely. The maid noticed his quiet sighs and the way he sometimes rubbed his temples, as if trying to release tension. She felt a growing concern for his well-being. One evening, during dinner, the woman asked him questions about his family and friends in a way that seemed normal, but the tone carried a hidden sharpness. When he hesitated, she smiled faintly, yet there was a subtle warning in her eyes. The maid, watching quietly from across the room, could feel the tension building. She knew the man was trying to navigate carefully, to please the woman he loved. Without realizing how much he was being manipulated, the maid also noticed how the woman would react to small disagreements. If someone questioned her opinion or offered a suggestion, she would nod politely, but her eyes would flash with a quiet anger. She had a way of making others feel wrong for thinking differently, and she did it so subtly that most people never realized it. The maid, however, had learned to read these small signs. She sensed the danger that others could not see, and it made her more vigilant. Meanwhile, the man began experiencing moments of confusion and doubt. He found himself questioning his own decisions, wondering if he was doing something wrong even when he knew he was not. The pressure of pleasing the woman, combined with the subtle manipulation he could not fully understand, created a quiet storm in his mind. Yet he still believed in her love, still trusted her words, and still hoped for the perfect life they had planned together. The woman also began creating private scenarios that involved the man's isolation. She would suggest that certain friends were jealous of their relationship, or that family members did not truly understand the bond they shared. He listened politely, nodding, and began to withdraw slightly from others, trusting her perspective more than his own instincts. The maid noticed these small steps of isolation and felt alarmed. She could see that he was being subtly controlled, but she also knew she had to be careful not to reveal her suspicions too soon. One afternoon, the maid discovered something unusual while cleaning the bedroom. A small note had been left on the man's desk, partially hidden under some papers. It contained words that were strangely disturbing, suggesting that he should consider doing something drastic if he wanted to make things right. The maid's heart raced as she read it. She did not understand the full meaning yet, but she knew it was serious. She quietly set the note aside, determined to watch closely and protect him. Over the next few days, the woman's behavior became more unpredictable. She would switch from charm to anger in seconds, creating a tense environment in the household. Guests would still see the polite smiles and elegant manners, but the maid could feel the undercurrent of manipulation and pressure. She observed the man carefully, noticing the way he seemed to shrink slightly in her presence, how he carefully chose his words to avoid conflict, and how he sometimes seemed to disappear into thought when left alone. The maid began to feel the weight of responsibility. She realized that she was the only one who could see the danger clearly. The man trusted everyone, believed in everyone's good intentions, and could not see the woman's manipulation. She felt a quiet determination to protect him, to be vigilant, and to notice every small sign of danger. She could feel that something was building, something that could harm him if not stopped. One evening, the man spoke to the maid in a quiet, hesitant voice. He mentioned that he sometimes felt overwhelmed, though he could not explain why. The maid nodded, offering a comforting smile, and listened without judgment. He did not speak of the woman's behavior directly, only of the growing pressure he felt in his life. The maid sensed that he was struggling quietly, trying to balance love, trust, and fear. She knew that the coming days would be crucial in understanding what was really happening. The tension grew slowly, almost invisibly. The woman continued her charm in public, while in private, her control over the man became more apparent. The maid watched quietly, noticing how small actions like a sharp glance, sudden change in tone, or a carefully worded suggestion could create anxiety and doubt in him. She realized that the situation was becoming dangerous, and she had to be ready to act if needed. Despite the growing tension, life moved on. Wedding preparations continued, friends and family continued to visit, and the household appeared joyful to outsiders. The man still smiled, still laughed, and still tried to enjoy the process. Though the weight of pressure was slowly building within him, the maid observed him carefully. Noting the small signs of stress, the quiet moments of doubt, and the subtle influence the woman had over his thoughts and actions, the maid began making small plans in her mind. She would observe closely, gather details, and be ready to act if things escalated. She felt a growing sense of urgency, but also a need for patience. The man was unaware of the danger, trusting in the love he believed to be true. The woman's manipulations were subtle, almost invisible to everyone else, but the maid could see the truth. She knew that the coming days could change everything. In the evenings, when the household quieted down, the maid would sit by the window, reflecting on what she had observed. She could see the man walking alone in the garden, his posture slightly slumped, his mind distant. She could see the careful, controlled steps of the woman, her smile hiding the quiet power she exerted over him. The contrast was clear, and the maid understood that this story of love and happiness might soon face a test unlike any other. As part 2 ends, the tension has grown stronger. The man is increasingly under pressure, feeling isolated and anxious, though he does not fully understand why. The woman's control and manipulation are becoming more apparent, and the maid is the only one who senses the real danger. The stage is set for the next turn, where the pressure might lead to an event that shocks everyone and changes the course of their lives forever. The days grew heavier in the household. The man tried to focus on the wedding, but the weight of unease pressed on him like a shadow he could not shake. Every decision, every small interaction, seemed to carry hidden pressure. The woman, who had always seemed charming and kind to everyone else, now began to show a sharper side when she was alone with him. Her words, gentle at first, began to twist subtly, as if testing the limits of his patience and his obedience. It started with small suggestions that seemed innocent. She would mention, in passing, that life could be difficult if one made the wrong choices. She would talk about how love required sacrifice, how true devotion demanded proof, how one's partner needed complete trust. At first, he laughed nervously, thinking she was exaggerating. But over time, the statements became more pointed, more insistent. He felt a tightening in his chest, a worry that he could not quite name. The maid, observing quietly from the kitchen or while tidying rooms, began to notice the tension growing in him. He would pace the halls late at night, staring at the walls, whispering to himself as if trying to work through a maze of thoughts he could not escape. She felt a quiet alarm. She had seen hints before, but now the signs were unmistakable. Something dangerous was taking shape, and it involved the woman he loved, the woman he trusted most. One evening, the woman asked him to sit with her in the study. The room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn, and a sense of privacy made the moment feel weighty. She spoke softly, asking him about his thoughts, about his fears, about his willingness to prove his love. At first, he tried to answer calmly, reassuring her that he cared for her, that he would do anything to make her happy. But she did not stop. Her questions grew more intense, her tone sharper, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You love me, don't you?" she asked, leaning closer. "You would do anything for me, right?" He nodded slowly. "Of course," he said. "You know I do." Her lips curved into a small, calculating smile. "Then you would show me, wouldn't you?" She whispered. "You would do something significant to prove that your love is true?" The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. He hesitated, unsure of what she meant. His heart raced, his palms sweaty. He wanted to please her, wanted to show her his devotion. But a small, quiet voice in his mind urged caution. That voice, however, was drowned out by the warmth of love he felt, by the belief that she would never ask him to do anything truly dangerous. The maid, standing quietly just outside the study, could sense the tension. She saw the man's hand shake slightly, saw the way his shoulders slumped under invisible weight. She felt a sinking feeling in her chest. She could not hear every word, but she sensed the danger, felt the risk in the way the woman leaned forward, the intensity in her gaze. She wanted to intervene, to warn him, but she knew that any sudden interference might only worsen the situation. She had to wait, had to watch, and had to be ready. Over the next few days, the woman continued her subtle pressure. She would bring up the idea of proving love in indirect ways, planting thoughts in his mind, guiding him toward actions that he would later regret. She framed it as devotion, as proof, as a demonstration of loyalty, all the while maintaining her innocent charm when anyone else was around. To the outside world, she remained perfect, kind, attentive, loving, but in private, her influence over him grew stronger, more dangerous. One evening, alone in the study, she presented the idea more directly. "Sometimes love asks for a sacrifice," she said quietly. "A test, if you will. Some people would fail, but I know you wouldn't." He tried to respond calmly. "I would never fail you," he said. "I care about you more than anything. You know that." Her eyes gleamed with something he could not name. "Then you would do exactly what I ask," she whispered, her voice both soft and commanding. "You would prove your love completely." Without question, the man's heart pounded. He wanted to please her, to make her happy, to show his devotion. But a small part of him hesitated, a faint warning that something was wrong. He tried to ask questions, to clarify, but her smile and intensity shut him down. The words were persuasive, the pressure overwhelming, and slowly, reluctantly, he began to consider the unthinkable. The maid, who had been observing quietly, noticed the change immediately. She saw the tension in his movements, the slight hesitation in his voice, the way his hands trembled ever so slightly. She could feel the danger rising, like smoke before a fire. Her mind raced, trying to figure out how to protect him, how to intervene without alerting the woman to her suspicions. She knew she had to act carefully, that any sudden move could trigger a tragedy. The next day, the man seemed withdrawn. He moved through the house in a daze, barely noticing the flowers or the preparations around him. He answered questions with short phrases, avoided eye contact, and seemed almost lost in thought. The maid followed him discreetly, ensuring he was safe, guiding small actions that kept him grounded without alarming him further. She felt a quiet responsibility growing heavier with each passing hour. That evening, the woman invited him to the garden, claiming she wanted a quiet moment together. The moon cast long shadows over the flowers and shrubs, creating a calm, serene atmosphere. But beneath the beauty, the man felt a tightening in his chest, a pressure he could not explain. She walked beside him slowly, her hand lightly touching his arm, her eyes holding his with an intensity that made him feel trapped and vulnerable. "You will do it, won't you?" she asked softly, almost as if she were reading his thoughts. I don't know," he whispered, his voice shaking. I want to make you happy, but I don't understand what you mean." Her smile was gentle, almost tender. "You will understand soon," she said. "You will do exactly what I ask, and everything will be perfect. Trust me." The man felt a mix of confusion, fear, and love. He wanted to trust her, to believe in her words. But the small voice inside him grew louder, warning him that something was wrong. Yet love, that powerful, blinding force, pulled him toward compliance. He wanted to prove himself, to show that his love was true, to satisfy the woman who held his heart. That night, the tension reached its peak. The woman suggested an action that was dangerous, something that could have led to a tragic outcome. The man hesitated, fear gripping him, but he was overwhelmed by her persuasion. The intensity in her voice, and the belief that failing her love was unthinkable. He began to prepare, unsure of every step, filled with dread, yet driven by a desire to prove his devotion. The maid, sensing the imminent danger, stayed close. She noticed every small movement, every tremor, every hesitation. Her heart raced as she realized the seriousness of the situation. She could not allow this to happen. She followed quietly, ready to intervene, hoping she could stop a disaster before it was too late. Her eyes never left him, her mind working faster than ever, planning how to save him from the danger he did not fully understand. In those moments, the household seemed suspended in time. The quiet night, the moonlight, the flowers in the garden, all of it became a backdrop for an unfolding drama. The man was caught between love and fear, persuasion and doubt. The woman's charm and intensity pushed him toward a dangerous decision, while the maid's vigilance and care stood as a silent shield between him and harm. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, a small action by the maid, a quiet intervention, a gentle voice, a timely distraction prevented the unthinkable. The man's focus shifted, the dangerous path was avoided, and the immediate threat passed. He looked at the maid, unaware of what could have happened, feeling a strange mix of relief and confusion. She smiled faintly, hiding the fear and urgency she had felt. But inside, her heart was racing, knowing how close they had come to tragedy. The woman, realizing her plan had been thwarted, maintained her calm exterior. But there was a subtle flicker of frustration in her eyes. She could not show it to anyone else, but the maid had seen it. The dynamics in the household had changed subtly. The man remained unaware of the danger, but the maid knew that the next steps would be crucial. The tension, the manipulation, and the pressure were far from over, and she understood that vigilance, patience, and courage would be needed in the days ahead. The night ended quietly, but the sense of impending danger lingered. The man, still trusting and loving, went to sleep unaware of how close he had come to disaster. The maid, keeping watch, felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her shoulders. She knew that the coming days would be critical, that the situation could escalate further, and that only careful observation and timely action could prevent a tragedy from unfolding. The days after that tense night felt heavier than ever. The man moved through the house with quiet unease, still unaware of how close he had come to danger. He tried to focus on the wedding plans, but the weight in his chest refused to lift. The woman remained charming in public, smiling and joking with friends and family, yet in private, her words and actions carried the same quiet pressure, the same subtle insistence that he prove his devotion. The maid, ever vigilant, noticed the small changes. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided eye contact, and the hesitation in his steps. She could see the faint tremble in his hands when he thought no one was watching. Every small gesture told her that the danger was not over, that the pressure he was under could still push him toward a choice that could destroy everything. She felt a growing sense of urgency, knowing that she had to act carefully and decisively. One afternoon, while cleaning the study, the maid noticed something unusual. A small drawer, which had always seemed empty, was slightly ajar. Curiosity and concern guided her hands as she opened it. Inside, she found a collection of notes, letters, and carefully written plans. Her heart pounded as she realized the content of these papers. The notes contained clear instructions, suggestions, and manipulations meant to pressure the man into actions that could have harmed him. The woman's charm and control were evident in every word, her intentions hidden beneath layers of manipulation and subtle threat. The maid's hands trembled as she read. Each note revealed a plan, each letter a strategy to push the man toward proving his devotion in dangerous ways. The careful writing, the specific instructions, and the hidden threats left her stunned. She could not believe that someone she had seen as composed and charming could plan something so cruel. The sense of danger that had been building in her mind now became a tangible, horrifying reality. She quickly realized that this was more than manipulation. This was a calculated attempt to control him completely, to push him to a point of desperation. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She had to act, but she had to act carefully. If the woman discovered that she had found the notes, the situation could spiral into something far worse. The maid knew she had to protect him without alerting the woman. She had to find a way to reveal the truth safely. The maid took the notes to a quiet corner of the house, hiding them safely in her apron. She began piecing together the plan, trying to understand the full extent of the woman's intentions. The more she read, the more horrifying it became. The instructions were clear, detailed, and manipulative, designed to isolate him further, increase his anxiety, and make him believe that he had no choice but to follow her commands. Every word revealed a mind determined to dominate and control. Hiding behind a mask of charm and affection, she felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. How could someone plan to hurt a person so quietly, so cunningly, and under the guise of love? Her mind raced with ways to protect him. She knew she could not act alone. The danger was too great. She had to find a way to show him the truth without shocking him into panic. She had to be careful, patient, and precise. The next day, the maid watched the man carefully. She noticed the way he hesitated as he moved through the house, the quiet anxiety in his expression. He seemed tired, distracted, and increasingly unsure of himself. She felt a deep sorrow. He had always been strong, kind, and trusting, and now that trust was being exploited. She resolved to act, knowing that the moment to reveal the truth could not come too soon. Late that afternoon, the maid found a private moment to speak with him. She chose her words carefully, speaking gently yet firmly. "I've noticed something," she said, her voice calm but serious. "I think someone is trying to pressure you in ways that are not right. You may not see it clearly, but I want to help you understand what's happening." He looked at her, confused and slightly alarmed. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice small. "Who? How?" The maid handed him the notes, carefully showing him the contents. His eyes widened as he read. Each word, each instruction, each manipulative sentence hit him like a blow. He could not believe that someone he trusted, someone he loved, could plan something so cruel. Shock, disbelief, and anger flashed across his face. He looked at the maid, gratitude and fear mixing in his eyes. I didn't know," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I never imagined this could be true. She seemed so kind, so perfect. How could she plan something like this?" The maid placed a hand gently on his arm. "She hid it well," she said softly. "But the truth is here. You have to be careful. You need to see what she's really capable of before it's too late." For the first time, the man saw clearly. The woman's charm, her sweetness, and her control had been a mask, hiding dangerous intentions. Every hesitation, every manipulation, every moment of quiet pressure now made sense. He felt a mix of relief and horror. Relief that the maid had discovered the truth. Horror that he had come so close to following a path that could have destroyed him. The maid guided him through the notes. Pointing out the manipulations and subtle threats, she showed him how every action had been calculated. Every suggestion designed to push him toward proving his devotion in dangerous ways. The more he understood, the more his fear and anger grew. He realized how carefully the woman had worked to isolate him, control him, and manipulate his emotions. Together, they began planning the next steps. They needed to protect him, confront the situation carefully, and ensure that the woman could not harm him further. The maid's calm presence and careful guidance gave him strength. He realized that he was not alone, that someone was watching, caring, protecting him in ways he had not imagined. The realization also brought a sense of empowerment. He understood that the control the woman had over him was not absolute. He had been manipulated, yes, but now he had knowledge, support, and clarity. He could take action to protect himself, reclaim his life, and prevent further harm. The maid's discovery had changed everything. Over the next few days, they worked quietly. The man began to regain his confidence, moving with more assurance, speaking more firmly, insisting the subtle pressures he had once felt. The maid remained close, observing, guiding, and ensuring that he remained safe. The household continued its daily routines, but now, beneath the calm surface, a careful vigilance had been established. The woman, unaware that her plans had been discovered, continued her charm in public, smiling and joking, maintaining the perfect image. But the man now saw the truth behind the smile. He understood her intentions, recognized the manipulation, and was prepared to face her when the time came. The maid's discovery had not only revealed the danger but also given him tools to respond. The tension in the household remained, but it had shifted. No longer was the man blindly under pressure. He was aware, alert, and supported. The maid's courage and careful observation had prevented a tragedy and given him a chance to reclaim his life. Every small moment of vigilance, every quiet intervention, has been crucial in this turning point. By the end of Part 4, the stage was set for a confrontation. The truth was clear, the danger understood, and the man now had the knowledge to act. The maid's discovery had changed the balance, revealing the fiancé's true intentions in preparing the household for the moment, and the hidden plans could no longer be hidden. The story was now moving toward resolution, with courage, truth, and vigilance leading the way. The house felt quieter that morning. Though the tension lingered in the air like a heavy cloud, the man moved carefully through the rooms, the notes clutched in his hand, a steady determination in his eyes. The maid stayed close, moving silently beside him, watching for any sign that the woman might suspect they knew the truth. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of clarity. The danger was real, but he was no longer powerless. The knowledge the maid had uncovered had given him a lifeline, and now he was ready to take the steps needed to reclaim his life. When the woman entered the room, smiling and radiant as always, he felt a surge of emotions: anger, fear, betrayal, and relief, all at once. She greeted him warmly, unaware of what had been discovered. Her charm was flawless, her smile bright, but he could now see through it. He no longer felt blind to her intentions. Every subtle pressure, every manipulative suggestion, every quiet attempt to control him now stood revealed. The mask she had worn so carefully was slipping, and he was prepared to confront it. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly, his voice steady but firm. The woman raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. She nodded slowly, leading him to the study, the room where so much tension had been quietly building. The maid followed discreetly, standing just outside the door, ready to intervene if needed. She could feel the weight of the moment. This confrontation could change everything, for better or worse. Once inside, he placed the notes on the table between them, his hands steady now, no longer trembling with fear. "I know what you've been planning," he said, his voice calm but carrying a quiet authority. "I know how you've tried to manipulate me, how you've tried to control me, and how you've tried to make me do things that could have harmed me. I can see it clearly now." For a moment, the woman froze, her charming smile faltering just slightly. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her tone carefully measured, though a shadow of tension flickered across her face. She glanced at the notes, realizing that they were the proof of her plans, and that her carefully constructed mask could no longer hide the truth. The man took a deep breath, holding her gaze. "These notes, these instructions, they show everything. The way you've tried to control me, to isolate me, to push me into dangerous actions, it's all here. I trusted you, and I see now how you used that trust. But I am not powerless anymore. I know the truth, and I will protect myself." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of anger mixed with surprise. She tried to maintain composure, to reclaim the charm and innocence she had always used to mask her intentions, but it was too late. The truth had been revealed, and he could see the real person behind the mask. "You can't understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I only wanted to make sure you loved me completely. I only wanted to protect our love." He shook his head, his expression resolute. "Protect our love? By trying to hurt me, by manipulating me, by isolating me. That is not love. That is control, and it ends now." The maid stepped closer, her calm presence reinforcing his words. "It's time for the truth to be seen," she said gently but firmly. "You cannot hide what you've done. The manipulation, the threats, the attempts to pressure him, they are here in writing. The plan is clear, and it is dangerous." The woman's face changed as the realization settled in. She had always relied on charm and subtlety to maintain control, but now those tools were useless. The man's clarity and the maid's courage had exposed her intentions. She tried to speak, to argue, to redirect blame, but her words fell flat. There was no one else to deceive, no audience to charm. The truth stood in the room, solid and undeniable. For the first time, the man felt a sense of power he had not known in weeks. He had been manipulated, yes, but now he was free. The fear that had weighed so heavily on him was lifting, replaced by determination and a sense of justice. "I trusted you," he said softly, "and I see now that trust was exploited. But I will not let it continue. I will not let anyone control me like that again." The woman's expression shifted again, this time to a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had underestimated his awareness, his courage, and the loyalty of the maid who had quietly protected him. Her plans had failed, and she could see the consequences of her actions coming clearly into focus. The man's words, firm yet calm, carried a weight she could no longer ignore. The confrontation was not violent, but it was intense. Every word, every glance, every movement carried significance. The man spoke calmly, refusing to let anger dictate his actions. While the woman's charm and manipulation lost all power in the face of clarity, the maid, silently observing, remained ready to support and protect, ensuring that the situation did not escalate further. After a long moment of tense silence, the woman's composure finally broke. She realized that her control was gone, that the trust she had relied upon had been replaced with knowledge and vigilance. She could no longer hide her intentions, no longer manipulate the situation. The man's calm strength and the maid's quiet courage had exposed everything. The man took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He had faced the danger, seen the truth, and reclaimed his power. The maid stood beside him, a quiet reminder that he was not alone, that support and vigilance could prevent harm, and that courage often came from the quietest of people. Together they had confronted the manipulation and revealed the truth. The woman, stripped of her charm and control, had no choice but to accept the consequences of her actions. Whether through social exposure, removal from the household, or legal means, her plans had failed, and the danger she posed was neutralized. The man felt a sense of liberation, knowing that he was no longer trapped by fear, manipulation, or pressure. In the days that followed, the household began to heal. The tension that had loomed over every interaction slowly dissipated. The man regained his confidence, moving through the house with assurance, speaking with clarity and trusting his own judgment. The maid continued her quiet vigilance, ensuring that the environment remained safe, supportive, and calm. The events of the past weeks had left their mark, but the immediate danger was gone, replaced with hope and clarity. The man reflected on the experience with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. He had been manipulated, pressured, and nearly driven to harm, but he had survived. Guided by the careful observation and courage of the maid, he understood now the importance of trust, vigilance, and awareness. And he resolved to carry these lessons forward in his life. The maid, quietly proud, continued her duties with a calm sense of fulfillment. She had protected someone she cared about, prevented a tragedy, and ensured that the truth was revealed. Her actions had been crucial in exposing manipulation and safeguarding the man's well-being. In her quiet, unassuming way, She had become the guardian of his life and trust. The woman, having lost the power she had carefully cultivated, was removed from the man's life. The household no longer carried the heavy tension of manipulation and fear. Friends and family, unaware of the full danger, continued to visit and celebrate, while the man and the maid maintained a quiet vigilance, ensuring that no harm could return. The wedding, once threatened by fear and manipulation, now became a celebration of truth, courage, and resilience. The man felt a renewed sense of joy, knowing that he had faced danger and come through stronger. The maid's loyalty and bravery had ensured that he was safe, and he carried a deep gratitude for her guidance. Life slowly returned to normal, though the lessons remained. The man understood the importance of observing behavior, trusting instincts, and valuing those who quietly protect and support. The maid understood the power of vigilance, patience, and courage in the face of subtle danger. Together they had faced manipulation, exposed the truth, and emerged stronger in the end. The story was not just about love, manipulation, or danger. It was about trust, awareness, and the quiet courage of those who protect others. The man learned to value clarity over charm, truth over manipulation, and vigilance over blind trust. The maid demonstrated that heroes are often hidden in plain sight, acting quietly but decisively to protect those who cannot see the danger themselves. The household, once shadowed by tension and manipulation, now shone with relief, trust, and renewed hope. The man moved forward, stronger and wiser, carrying with him the lessons learned and the gratitude for the maid who had stood by him when he needed it most. The woman's plan had failed. The danger had passed and life continued, guided by truth, courage, and the quiet strength of those who act to protect others. The story ended with a sense of resolution, a sense of safety restored, and a reminder that even in the most charming of masks, truth will eventually emerge, and courage, no matter how quietly expressed, can save lives. The man and the maid, bonded by trust and shared experience, continued their lives with vigilance, awareness, and a deep appreciation for the strength it takes to protect someone you care about.